Hello, Internet friends, and welcome back to Love-Hate Relationship, an opinionated podcast for opinionated people. I'm your host, Andy Boel.
And I'm your other host, Alex Ruiz, and as always, we're here to brighten your day, anger your soul, and tell you how to live your lives in that order. And for all our listeners out there, I'm going to be upfront with you. It is May 3rd right now. You know, we're 2 days before Cinco de Mayo. We're 1 day before Star Wars Day. Andy, before we get started on our topics and our episode proper, as we always like to do, I like to, bitch about for a little bit just to get terrible people to not listen to our podcast because we bore them and they leave terrible reviews on us. We see you. But I only have one question for you. Endgame?
We are in the endgame, and if you're worried about spoilers now, what's wrong with you? The movie's been out for over a month.
Be nice. Okay, right here, Andy is going to drop where we're done with this conversation and we start the episode proper.
Of course.
So spoilers, skip ahead to...
That is the 750 mark.
Okay, Andy, Endgame. How much did you cry?
You know, I did not cry. I got
You
emotional.
A bitch.
I got emotional. I did not cry. The thing that I think got me the most was Hawkeye and Scarlet Widow's sacrifice off.
Scarlet Widow? Punch yourself in the face and continue.
Yeah, fair. Well, Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, so at least the mental through line is there. Black Widow,
fine.
of course, Black Widow.
Fine, continue.
Doing probably her strongest work of the series, I think.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't cry because I thought Iron Man sacrificing himself was so thematically appropriate. From a meta context, the progenitor of the Marvel Cinematic Universe dying, and this truly being the end. I tipped my hat to it, and it's for that reason that I wasn't too sad about it.
Oh.
How much did you cry?
Oh, I made it all the way until On Your Left. And as soon as I heard that, as soon as I heard Sam's voice in Caps Comlink, then I heard the On Your Left, and I saw the portals opening. I, started. And then I saw T'Challa and Shuri with Okoye, and I saw Falcon fly out, and then as soon as I saw Peter, I was done. I was
Sure.
cool,
Yeah.
all right. And then I spent the next, 10 to 20 minutes intermittently weeping. It was fan service, 100%. It was they had the panning shot of all the female MCU characters protecting Spider-Man, and it's just and I wept at that. And they had all of the reunion moments, Tony and Spidey, and they had Black Panther asking Clint for the glove and telling him, give it to me, when I'm remembering in Civil War when he was like, hi, we haven't met, I'm Clint Barton, and Black Panther's literally just I don't care, and starts fighting him. They square all these circles, and I'm just pouring tears in this theater. I was so gleeful.
Oh,
and I did fine until that point.
Sure. No, I'm happy you're in such a good place with your emotions.
Oh yeah.
I think my favorite part of the movie was the all-female Avengers kick-ass force getting their moment. I loved it for reasons that some of my coworkers claimed they hated it. While it did not make sense in the story, it was such a great middle finger from the Russo brothers to all of the Comicsgate, women can't be superheroes, I'm not going to see Captain Marvel or Wonder Woman dickbags out there. And, I hope that it helped inspire so many girls and boys to just see that, of course, girls can be superheroes. Here are all of our kick-ass ones.
To wit, sometimes they're the best superheroes. Again, my favorite X-Man is Storm, and anyone who tries to step to me on that, I will crush under the weight of continuity. Yeah. Because that's how I am.
Yeah. Sweet, perfect Karen Gillan, sweet baby Nebula, literally killing her demons.
Literally killing her past.
Right. She was everything to me and my favorite part of the movie, and not just because I have a terrible crush on Karen Gillan.
That's well established. It's
Indeed.
All right.
No,
it's
okay. I think Infinity War was a better movie, but the final climactic, everybody's invited fight sequence was unlike anything I've seen in a superhero movie.
Yeah. And I mean, here's the thing. I am going to blow right past the years in which I have argued, and I have argued this for years, that if a sequel requires you to have seen the original to work, it's not a good movie. It could be a good movie if watching the original makes it better, but if it cannot work on its own, it's a bad movie. I'm going to go ahead and ignore that when it comes to this movie, because at the time that I've been arguing that, we didn't have an 11-year culmination. Do you have to have seen all 20-some-odd movies for this to make sense? No. You could probably get away with watching about half of them and understand it pretty well. That said, as a standalone movie, you're right. Infinity War is absolutely better. Because Infinity War arguably could stand alone on its own as a movie. But Endgame isn't for cinema people. Endgame is for MCU people. Endgame is for fans of this universe. It's an annual comic.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a summer event, but like one of the good ones. It's not Axis.
Yeah. No, it's Inferno, you know? It's everything that Secret Wars wanted to be and couldn't because Jim Shooter was Jim Shooter.
No, my final thing of it is I am awaiting on bated breath, and I am fascinated to see in the universe what happens next and where we go from here, and how much certain people are referenced, and what the next 5 years of Marvel are going to look like.
I agree. I mean, we're gonna get more of these movies. 1.2 billion in the first weekend. We're gonna get more of these movies. We're getting a Suicide Squad sequel, and that made 700 million. The first Captain America movie made 370 million, and now we're here. They're gonna make more of these.
Yeah. I keep waiting for the wave to crash, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, they're staving off that crash, but we'll see what happens. I mean, cowboy movies died.
Well,
and those were unstoppable for a good, 40 years, 30 years?
You've given me something to hope for here, because following this comparison, that means eventually we're going to get the superhero version of Unforgiven, which is, of course, Old Man Logan. And I'm here for an Old Man Logan movie.
I mean, that was kind of just Logan, but like the movie Logan.
Logan, you still have time.
Indeed. But Logan didn't have the Red Skull getting decapitated or Venom being attached to a T-Rex. Like, I want the literal, like, film adaptation of the comic.
I don't know if I can deal with incest Hulks. I don't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I loved Ruffalo way too much to really be able to stomach that. That's a good point.
That's going to be after the What Ifs. Like, apparently Disney Plus is going to have an animated What If cartoon.
I'm very excited for that, yeah.
Yeah, that's literally just like every episode opens with the Watcher doing a What If, and then it's a half-hour episode of a What If story. So,
And apparently, Disney is making no less than 4 Marvel TV shows. We're getting Loki, we're getting Scarlet Witch and Vision, and we're getting...
that's called WandaVision,
Right.
which is the worst title
the
ever.
worst name ever. And we're getting Winter Soldier and Falcon.
Yeah. So, plus we're getting a What If series, and who knows? We'll see what happens.
I saw the lineup of Disney Plus exclusive content and just got sad knowing that I was absolutely going to cave in and get that the second it comes out.
There are a lot of people who are going to be willing to give up their Hulu for that shit.
Oh yeah.
All right, you ready to get started?
Yeah. So diving from one niche, nerdy part of pop culture to another.
Hold on, you have to go over the format, Andy.
Oh.
Go over the format. I keep going over the format every episode. How about you go over the format for once, you freeloader?
Yes, Dad. So, this is Love-Hate Relationship, and if you're still with us, and if this is you randomly picked this episode and you're still with us, good on ya. Every episode, Alex and I take one topic we love, one topic we hate, and then we take your relationship questions and we try to offer our perfectly unqualified advice. This week...
100% unqualified.
Utterly unqualified. This week, it is my turn to bring up the love. And there's, we talk about movies a lot. We talk about comic books a lot. We talk about comic book movies a lot, clearly.
Yeah.
One section of nerdy pop culture-ness that has been pretty severely underrepresented on this show has been video games. And so, it is my pleasure today to talk about one of my absolute favorite video games of all time, something that I have not had access to for a while, and the reason I was inspired to talk about why I love Skyrim is because I've literally been pining to play it. So, Skyrim, for those of you who don't know, is the 5th Elder Scrolls game developed by Bethesda Softworks. The Elder Scrolls as a series is your typical sword and sorcery, Dungeons and Dragons-esque fantasy world. And if you've experienced it in one fashion, you've experienced it in pretty much any fashion you can. Just think of the world from The Hobbit, add in some cat people and some lizard people, and you're very close to Skyrim.
Khajiit as wares, if you have coin.
Okay.
So Skyrim is the 5th game, as I said. Like the rest of it, it is a open world fantasy role-playing game set in the mythical world of Tamriel. Basically a whole heaping mess of all of the wonderful fantasy tropes that I deeply love. And Alex, you have been clear to state that you are not something you particularly care for.
I'm ambivalent, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not mad about it. It's just not my jive.
And that's completely fair. It is lots of other people's jives. The Elder Scrolls, and specifically Skyrim, has just been an immensely popular game series. Skyrim came out in 2011, and as of time of recording, it stands as the 13th best-selling video game of all time. Now, Alex, I would love to force you to guess, what is the best-selling video game of all time?
Before I answer, I have to ask, is this does best-selling mean the game that has individually made the most money, or the one that has sold the most individual copies?
The one that has made the most individual money.
I'm gonna have to guess Fortnite.
That is a very good guess. I believe that it is 5th on the list.
Okay. So what's made the most money, Andy?
The game that has made the most money since the days of the Atari 2600 is Tetris.
I respect the hell out of this because I love Tetris.
I knew you would appreciate that. I got a hearty, sensible chuckle looking at the list because it just shows that like a simple game can have such lasting power.
I have. There was one point in my life, Andy, where I was playing so much Tetris, and this is a documented phenomenon. This is not just a personal thing that only ever happened to me. People have studied this, and it actually was a thing for me, where I was playing so much Tetris on a daily basis that I would close my eyes to like go to bed, or I would be staring off, and I would actually see Tetris games happening as I closed my eyes. That is how much Tetris I was playing.
Awesome. Fascinating.
Not healthy.
And that was before like iPhones were such a prevalent thing too, so you really had to work to give yourself that much screen time.
I had it on Game Boy. Thank you, Steph. Thank you to my sister who gave me a Game Boy and a copy of Tetris for I think my 10th birthday. It was her old Game Boy and her old games, and I just loved that shit.
There you go.
So please continue though. Skyrim.
Yeah, so Skyrim, it stands as nearly a decade later still being easily one of the most successful games from a financial standpoint ever made. It is something that I deeply love, and I'd like to take a moment to recognize Matt, the video game nerds out there. You will know everything I'm about to say. Half of our listening audience knows everything I'm here to talk about today. But I'd like to turn to the other half who have never heard of Skyrim or maybe have heard of it but just don't care for video games all that much. And I'm mainly talking to you guys today as I gush over this game.
We are legion.
There are dozens of us. Dozens. So to get into the plot just a little bit, Skyrim sees you play the stereotypical, mythical, as told by the prophecy style hero. Specifically, you play something called the Dragonborn, which is a being that can kill dragons along with just about anything and everything else you can encounter in the game. Beyond that, everything about your character, race, appearance, fighting style, how much magic you use, if you want to run around with a bow and just basically be a medieval sniper, whatever you want to do is entirely up to you. And the game is so expansive. It is so large. There are so many oodles and oodles and oodles of side quests to get into that I can admit, and I know for a fact I'm not the only person to do this, I have put in easily over 100 hours in playing Skyrim, and I have never finished it.
Wow. For context, Andrew, one of my favorite games when I was a teenager was the tremendously underrated Final Fantasy IX, which came on 4 discs for the PlayStation 1, ladies and gentlemen. And I probably logged 80 hours on that game to finish it. And I was not a good video gamer. I was not good at this game at all. I just really enjoyed it because it had a great story and great characters. And after your first 30 minutes, you understand how the mechanics work. So at that point, it's just figuring out everything else. You've done 100 hours on this game, and you haven't finished it. And you want to keep playing.
This is a game that I played near nonstop for months and months and months. And then I got distracted or got a little tired of it or something, and I put the game on a shelf unfinished and probably at the time played the latest Call of Duty or something. Did that, and I kid you not, like 6 months later, I got the itch, and I picked it up. I picked Skyrim up. I booted it back up. I loaded my save file, and within 10 minutes, it was just like, I'm back, and everything feels exactly like it did when I left, in the best way. It was slipping on a warm robe of just fun and adventure, and I can't think of many games that, myself specifically, I can just pick right back up. I'm very much if I stop in the middle of the story and come back to the game 6 months later, I have to restart and I have to play through the story. And Skyrim is one of the few games that isn't like that, and I do say that to its credit. Skyrim is a game where the main storyline, the thing I haven't finished, is basically train yourself with your dragonborn magic, which is literally screaming so loud you kill things. And
okay,
train your dragonborn magic and kill the main evil dragon, Alduin.
You do realize this sounds like the plot of a Ronnie James Dio concept album, right?
Maybe that's part of why I love it so much.
Because it's basically a Dio album?
Yeah, hell yeah!
That lasts 100 hours.
I could listen to 100 hours of Dio, and I think I think if you add in Elf and Heaven and Hell, there is.
Oh God! Okay, please continue.
The main story is, hey, learn how to do the thing. Go kill this dragon. It is very accomplishable as you level up and you get strong enough and you go kill the dragon. But the sweet, wonderful reason I can put in 100 hours of this game and be nowhere near that is there's just so much to do. If you want to decide that you're just going to become like the best assassin in the game, there's an entire line of questing that can do that. If you want to get into the geopolitics of the region you're in and decide that you're going to support the Viking king or go ahead and support the Roman legionary-esque Imperials, like, you can decide to do that. If you want to go just study at the in-game College of Wizardry and learn how to shoot lightning out of your eyes, you can do that. There is an overwhelming amount of freedom to the game. If you just want to crawl into every little mountain crevice and find each individual golem and kill him, you can do that. I hope that comes across as freeing and interesting and good as I mean for it to, because like that's the core of why I love this game. Skyrim is one of the most freeing experiences I've ever sat down and played. And it's more than just you can do whatever you can do in the game. There's another level to the freedom in that you can make this game whatever you want. You know, I spoke earlier about how there is a character creator, and that's nothing new. These days, if your game doesn't have a character creation system, it's because it is so story driven that you have to be the character you are. You know, you can be one of like 12 different races. You can be a guy or a girl. You can set up every last little physical attribute. You can decide, I'm going to be a knight, or I'm going to be a thief, or I'm going to be a wizard. And it's not even pick your class. It's just literally you, the player, decide, okay, I want to have my guy train in archery so he can become the best archer. Beyond that, this game and Bethesda, all of their games, they're also known for the Fallout series specifically, have become very open-minded to the idea of giving their game code to the fans and allowing them to create and customize. Bethesda and Skyrim especially are known for their mod system. Mod, short for modifications. Basically, smarter people than me are able to take the game code and do so many things with it. They have been able to make the game look better and literally like enhance the graphics so that it looks more real and more immersive. they have made entirely new games out of the engine, and there are several fan listed ones. A quick cursory search online can find them. If you're a fan of Skyrim and you haven't been aware of any of the completely unofficial spin-offs, I've heard some pretty great things about some of them. People can take this and make something new and engaging out of it, and I think that's honestly just wonderful. The other thing people can do is make it so that 1,000 dragons appear in the sky and burn you, and then somebody else can make it so that every one of those dragons looks like Macho Man Randy Savage. And that's not a joke, that's a real thing. And I love that too, because it speaks to a sense of humor. In this age when so many video game developers are obsessed with the bottom line and the financial aspect and sucking every last microtransaction they can out of the gamer. And don't get me wrong, Bethesda themselves have fallen into this trap and gotten greedy in later games. But at least for this moment in time, to look back and to be the sort of company that not only doesn't do microtransactions, but just offers up your product, literally your game code, to the fans, the people who are passionate about your thing, and to go, okay, I want to see what you guys can do. Make it cool or make it weird or make it funny, but make it your own. Like, I can't think of another game that really does that. I think that speaks to Skyrim's lasting appeal and helps educate as to why it is one of the most financially successful games of all time. I wish there was more of it, like that spirit of game development and marketing.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of that's anywhere in that vein, and it's by no means the same thing, is probably the Super Mario Builder game.
Yeah.
That Nintendo came up with a while ago, which I've never played. I played a lot of Super Mario back on the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo way back in the day, and the N64, but I have seen the YouTube videos of some of the Super Mario Builder courses, and it's literally just like, hey, you've played Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo. How would you like to build your own course? Here's all the stuff you need to build your own courses. And some people have built some truly horrifying courses with that. Nightmares that I would okay, if I saw this course, I have beaten all of Super Mario World more than once. All the bonus levels, gotten all the dragon coins, I've done the whole thing. Could never do some of these levels that some of these people are doing.
Fucking what? What?
Just throw the
what?
Throw the shell up there.
How am I? What the fuck is the difference?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, now what?
There you go.
So, I mean, are you telling me that Bethesda takes this? So you're telling me that they just have the code open publicly, or that it's just easy to break?
I'm not 100% sure on the history of this, but I'm pretty sure it was the second, and then it became the first.
Interesting. Because I mean, mods in video games are nothing new.
No, not at all.
People have done that. People have done that forever, but the idea that they would just allow it or encourage it is really fascinating to me.
Yeah, to speak from a place of actual research and not just completely out of my ass. The mods for Skyrim were generally made available through something that Bethesda pumped out with the game, at least on the PC, not necessarily on any other platform. But for PC, it would also come with a creation kit, and they were distributed freely on file sharing sites. And like I said, it's something I've never gotten into. It is certainly for people a little more intelligent than me, but to your point, it is pretty much freely available and welcomed from Bethesda, the developers, to give access to these things, and it goes from enhanced lighting and visuals, and that's clever in its own right, because it's basically saying, hey, we could patch this, but we're going to let you do it. If you really want the light to look that much cooler and you want the grass to look that much more like grass, here you go.
And And if you really want Macho Man Randy Savage to rain fire upon you from the sky, yeah, no, I will support anything that puts a bunch of Macho Man Randy Savages on my television screen. Like, I will definitely be down for that. So, I dig this.
I'm glad.
You know, I am, as Andy said, like, I'm of that population that really, like, I was a big video game nerd pretty much through middle school, and then I left it behind, and I've never really regretted that. I've gone back and played a couple of, like, handheld things here and there, played some phone games, played some Tetris on my phone, done that shebang, but consoles have always been intimidating to me, have been pretty much since I was a teenager, and I don't really like mess with them much beyond going over to friends' houses and playing Super Smash, which is just always great. And I'm pretty sure I put 100 hours into Super Smash Brothers Melee back in the day, but that's besides the point. You telling me, like, the thing that I have always heard, which I think is a really fascinating take, is, you know, video games. First of all, video games as just like taking up market share are comparable to movies. The video game industry pulls in about as much money as the movie industry does. Period. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
In terms of narrative, they're a really interesting frontier. You know, they're and specifically talking about these kind of open world. That's the right term, right? Open world style games?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so specifically in these kind of open world style games, I mean, that conceit of that level of freedom, both, textually in the game itself and physically, just in the ability to do these modifications, kind of pull this kind of stuff, I have to imagine it would be a gratifying experience. I have no interest in, like, playing games like this in general, but the fact that they exist kind of reminds me that it's a whole nother medium of creativity, and I am always in support of that, you know? I am always fascinated with people doing cool, dope-ass stuff with things that already exist, you know? That's how hip-hop got started.
Yeah.
And so you're telling me that there are these mods that in the game itself, you don't have to crack anything. You don't have to modify or adjust anything. You just have this experience wherein you can do, I mean, I guess whatever you want. I don't know. I find that really heartening in a weird way. Like, I knew Skyrim existed. I think I've watched some friends play Skyrim here and there. I never understood how it worked. But and you have educated me, which I appreciate. But like, I'm really heartened to know this is out there.
Yeah.
And you say that Bethesda has kind of turned a little on this with future games. Are there other people doing this kind of stuff still, or was this kind of a last hurrah? I know the new Spider-Man game apparently has a big open world concept that a lot of people are super into. Is there other shit still doing this? Is this still a proper genre?
There certainly is. Specifically, open world games have no sign of stopping, and even open world games that give you the same amount of freedom as Skyrim, like that's just becoming a mainstay. I can think of several titles like Grand Theft Auto 5 or Red Dead Redemption 2 that have even bigger worlds than the one presented in Skyrim and offer, just about as much freedom to do whatever you want, main story or not, as this. I can't think of as many games that are so closely tied into modifications like Skyrim is. I know for a fact that they exist, but for a lot of them, Skyrim and to the same extent Fallout were special in that they just were hand-in-hand associated with mods and doing crazy stuff. And I can't think of anything in the past decade that has reached that same level. And I don't know if that's necessarily from a lack of interest so much as just it's hard. It takes a commitment. That's a lot of contingencies that you, the coding developer, need to take into account for. That's a lot of work that needs to be done so that I can make Triple H show up and breathe fire on somebody else. So it's still there, and video game companies are, for the most part, with the exception of EA, pulling their heads out of their asses when it comes to microtransactions. But yeah, it's part of why Skyrim is so special, I think, because it was a technical achievement years before its time, and offers just such a wide, expansive, but at the same time very comfortable freedom. And for all of that to be in a genre and a setting that I have always very much loved, it's just the perfect mix. And that's why I think this is the second video game we've talked about in a positive light to give a segment like this. The last time I was railing against esports, but that speaks to how highly I think of Skyrim, that it was one of the first video games on our podcast I wanted to talk about.
Hi. I mean, we're 24 episodes in, and we're finally opening up this genre in a positive sense.
We did some market research. We saw the things that we could improve upon, and I'm here to talk about them.
You did research? Shit. I was just like, yo, I can't do another music topic for a while just because, like, I keep doing music topics, and I don't even have a music topic lined up. It's just a shitty one, so... All right. I mean, I'm proud of you for doing the research. I'm proud of you for doing the analysis. I ain't got no spreadsheets. I just gotta glance at it and go, all right, shit. Thing?
Well, I'd rather do this than my real job most days, so.
I mean, that's because your real job sucks shit, so. Okay, any final words on Skyrim, my friend?
No, I think I've said everything I wanted to say. It holds up. It's almost a decade old, and it 100% holds up. So if for some reason this is the first time you're hearing about it and you consider yourself a gamer, I don't think that's a very big Venn diagram, but if you fall under it, I heartily recommend that you give it a chance, and I don't think you're going to regret it.
And the rest of you can come over to my house and play Super Smash Brothers, and it'll be fantastic.
So you kind of you hinted at what you hate today, and I'd love to get into that.
That's right. Okay, so before we dive into this, I want to offer a disclaimer, which I rarely do, but I feel like it is going to be important because there are a number of you who have maybe clicked on this link out of curiosity and are wondering what exactly I'm going to talk about, and I want to lay this out before I get into the topic itself. So I'm going to be talking about the Star-Spangled Banner today, the song, the national anthem of the United States. And I want to state up front that my critiques in this section are regarding the song itself as an individual entity. Not the weird, stupid cult built up around worshiping it. Not pretending that kneeling or sitting down is disrespectful to troops. It isn't. And we have never, again, pretended our politics on this show are anything but our actual politics, and we do have a slant, and I'm proud of that slant. If you disagree, please DM me, email me, we'll talk. I actually would love to have a conversation about this, like, not even bullshitting here. But the point is, that's not what I want to talk about today. I don't want to talk about Colin Kaepernick, I don't want to talk about the patriotism, I don't want to talk about authoritarianism or fascism or any of this stuff. That's all separate, but it's an important issue, but it's a separate issue. I want to focus on this song and why it is a garbage song on its own merits. Would you say that's an okay disclaimer, Andy?
Absolutely, and it's as necessary as it is fascinating to me.
It's fascinating. Okay, I'm going to ask you to unpack that in a moment, but first, As I always like to do, my friend, opening question to you. So, as someone born and raised in these here United States, I know you have seen and heard the Star-Spangled Banner performed probably, what's fair, hundreds of times?
Yeah, I'd go ahead with that.
Okay, you're a hockey fan. They probably play it before every hockey
That's
game.
exactly a point I was going to make, yes.
Okay, there you go. So I want you to please tell me briefly. You don't have to go into a long point on this, but I want you to tell me about a rendition you've heard that stands out in your mind as particularly memorable. Could be because it was really bad. Could be because it was really amazing. Could be because it was a unique take. But one occasion of a time that you saw and or heard Star-Spangled Banner that really stands out in your memory. You're not allowed to say Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock.
Well, honestly, I had some difficulty finding one that stands out in my memory. I can recall being back in high school and a friend of mine in choir was talked into singing the Star-Spangled Banner before... I don't even think it was a football game. It might have been a lacrosse game. The crowd wasn't incredibly big, but being talked into singing and being just incredibly nervous under the weight of the song specifically, and the fact that, you know, it's something you sing alone for the most part. And she did a perfectly fine job. The thing that I wanted to kind of shoehorn into my answer, because this is something that I have seen happen so many times it's become infamous. There's always the bit in the Star-Spangled Banner, whether it's at a hockey game or pretty much any other function, where they get to, and the home of the... And then you always get somebody who decides they need to be the one guy to woo the land of the free. Yeah! Doesn't matter where you are.
Wow.
Doesn't matter who's singing, under what context. There will always be the one guy who has to hype up that last line of the song. And I remember that. I can remember hearing that every time more than I can remember any particularly awful versions of the Star-Spangled Banner.
Okay. Well, I think that that's completely valid. You know, you say this, and I'm kind of going, yeah, you know what? I have totally fucking heard that happen. Like, damn. All right. So... the woo boy of the Star-Spangled Banner. That's your answer to the question. Yes. I accept this.
The sweet woo boy who's just so excited.
Okay. Awesome. So, America. All right. I'm going to get started with just some very, very brief history, and I will try and run through this fairly quickly so that we can get into the actual details and discussion. And Andy, I'll be interested to know, after I get done with this spiel, how much of this you already knew before we talk about this. So, basic background of the song is that on September 14th, my birthday, of 1814, lawyer and crappy poet Francis Scott Key was being held captive on a British boat during the Battle of Baltimore Harbor during the War of 1812. And when he saw the morning after the bombardment of Fort McHenry at the edge of the harbor, that the American flag, which at the time had 15 stars and stripes, was waving over the fort, he knew that it at that point not been taken. The British were bombarding to try and take the fort. He realized that the Americans had held out. And so inspired was he by this that he wrote a poem titled Defense of Fort McHenry. Not McHenry, Mahenry. Why he left out the C, I have no idea. They drank more beer than water back then. The poem was later set to the British song The Anacreon in Heaven, which was popular at the time. So, to wit, this would kind of be the equivalent of someone basically, like, writing a poem based on what they considered to be a very... harrowing patriotic moment, and then essentially setting it to the music of Uptown Funk.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
This is that ice cold Michelle fight for that white gold.
In 1889, the U.S. Navy recognized the song with the poems as lyrics for official use. President Woodrow Wilson did the same in 1916. And then it was made the official national anthem by Congress in March of 1931, which I must point out was during the fucking Great Depression. So that's your history of the song. It has been our national anthem for less than 100 years. Written during the War of 1812, which no one really thinks about, and is musically based on a British song. So I want that to kind of just be in your heads. Andy, how much of that did you know before I kind of ran down it and sent you these notes?
So I knew about Francis Scott Key, and I knew about his very upsetting night on a British ship and seeing the flag. I think, that's basically as much of a history lesson as anybody gets about the Star-Spangled Banner. Everything else is completely new to me, and I'm reminded of how the final countdown is basically synonymous with the National Football League at this point.
Wait, what?
No,
I know the song, but what the hell does it have to do with the National Football League?
It is played multiple times, pretty much during every in and out commercial, cut to commercial part. It is played on the televised feed of quite literally every football game. I promise you.
So Swedish hair metal band Europe's one-hit wonder, The Final Countdown, played at every football game.
We don't have enough diehard football fans, I don't think, on our core listenership, but the ones we do have are sitting there either nodding along or I just broke their brains. I just bring it up because it sounds like exactly the circumstances under which the Star-Spangled Banner became our national anthem.
I mean, kinda, because if you look into it at the time, for that period of time between when the Navy had recognized it up through it becoming the anthem, it was, you grew up with the America songs. You're America the Beautifuls, the You're My Country 'Tis of These, old, I don't want to say Americana, because that's a very particular genre. But these almost old colonial songs, almost. They're not, that's the wrong term technically, because colonial era ended after independence and all this. But that's the association, right? How many people do you think knew that the song was written during the War of 1812? I thought it was written during the Revolutionary War.
Of course, because that's the most patriotic of our wars.
Exactly. And the War of 1812 was so boring it was named after the year it started, and it ended 2 years later. No one's going to say the War of 1814. That's a horrible way to brand. That doesn't roll off the tongue at all.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and the thing that I didn't realize until I did this research was how recently this was our national, less than 100 years ago. 1931? Really? I thought it, if you told me it became our national anthem in the mid-1800s, I would have gone, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. You give it a little time. Country's less than 100 years old by that point. This makes, no, 1931. I had grandparents alive in 1931. So that was a thing for me.
It gives me hope that it's not too late to change it. Maybe to the final countdown. Or hey, Sister Christian. I'd take either one.
Night Ranger, Sister Christian. Oh my God, Andrew. Okay. We're going to get into this in a second. So I listed a few reasons as to why I really dislike this song. First off, and I feel like this is worth mentioning, and again, I am not getting into the current debates surrounding the anthem and kneeling or, its patriotism or anything like that. I just want to point out, Andy, What do you know of the other 3 verses of the Star-Spangled Banner?
I didn't know they existed until getting your email about our show notes.
Yes, indeed. Andy, so Defense of Fort McHenry is a poem in 4 stanzas. And technically speaking, the Star-Spangled Banner has all 4 stanzas. People who have played in bands or maybe quartets or trios that have regularly had to perform this are aware of those other stanzas, those other verses. And I'm going to tell you right now, the song's kind of racist if you get past the first verse. I'm going to very specifically point to the 3rd verse of the song, which contains the lyrics, and I quote, "No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave." Now for context, anyone who's not familiar with the War of 1812, at the time, it's well known that a number of American slaves, people currently held in bondage, this is pre-Civil War, defected to the British side on the promise that they would be receiving their freedom after the war. It's also worth noting that there were a number of mercenaries hired for the British. That's what the term hireling and slave is referring to in the song. The song is written from a pretty pro-slavery perspective. Now you could say it was 1814. You know, Francis Scott Key was right there in line with everybody. Sure, that's fine. Patrick Henry was pro-slavery too. And we consider him a great American thinker. But the fact of the matter is, we can quote Patrick Henry saying, "Give me liberty or give me death," but we're not quoting his pro-slavery arguments, of which he had many. And we're not quoting the part of the Star-Spangled Banner where someone basically gives "and those ungrateful slaves will get theirs" statement. We don't sing that part. I would argue, I don't think we don't sing that part because of the issue of slavery. A big reason for that was because during World War I, when we were allied with the British, performances of the national anthem by U.S. military bands, which normally did all 4 verses, deliberately omitted the 3rd verse. Because the 3rd verse also contains a whole lot of references as to how shitty their enemy was. And their enemy at the time was the British.
Thou globby bottle of cheap, stinking chip oil!
So, they decided to omit the verse because it would offend their British allies in the World War. They didn't see a problem with omitting the verse because it's racist and pro-slavery and pro-death of freedom-seeking slaves.
You know, this is why I said it was fascinating that you're making very clear point to sidestep any of the political argument that has come along with the song, as we are learning since its inception. I'm learning here that Francis Scott Key was friends with Andrew Jackson.
Noted genocider and pro-slavery dude, Andrew Jackson. Continue.
Referred to African Americans as a distinct and inferior race of people, and was the leader of the American Colonization Society, whose mission it was to send freed slaves back to Africa. Important context that I did not know that makes the last line a bit more obvious, because I mean, even back then you could have found some way to disparage your British enemies rather than calling out the one subsect of that enemy that also happened to be black.
Just putting it out there, you know, just putting it out there. So yes, the song has racist undertones. And okay, you could say, like, nobody sings the 3rd verse. Nobody outside of, like, the clan or the military will do the 3rd verse. Okay, all right. You could say that. Like, That's fine. We also, there's a version of Huckleberry Finn out there where they change the N-word to slave. There's a lot of issues here, but okay, I get the effort. It's a stupid effort. It's a dumb effort. It's the wrong effort, but your heart's in a not awful place. But even moving on from that, I'm just gonna say, in practical terms, that song is very difficult to sing. Now, Andy, this is gonna be one of those moments where I take something that I've been, just reading up on personally and applying it in here. You ever meet those people who, read a book and decide that they need to interject it into every conversation they have? I've been studying up on music theory lately, and I have the language because I've been studying music theory to actually talk about this. The Star-Spangled Banner, because of the Anacreon in Heaven, the British song on which it's based, is ridiculously difficult to sing. It spans a range of 19 semitones. That is just a little over an octave and a half. Andy, you've done a little bit of singing in your time. I know you did musical theater. Do you know how many octaves your own voice goes? How many do, re, mi's you can go through before you cut out?
Can't lie to you. I have no idea.
A female deer.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. I talked to Stephanie about this, and Stephanie has had some music lessons. She sings. She has an idea of this. And we actually went through her vocal range, and her vocal range goes, I think, about 2.5 octaves, which is pretty damn good. My own vocal range is a little less than an octave and a half. So I can't sing this song, period. If I were to sing this song, I would need to drop certain parts down an octave. So I would have to be and the land of the free. I would need to do some drops in order to sing this. Stephanie conceivably could sing this if she warms up, if she, goes through all of the vocal exercises that singers who care about their voices go through. You've done these exercises, Andy.
Yes.
She would be able to sing this. Untrained singers regularly butchered this song to the point where it's genuinely amazing when people actually do it well. Part of the reason I asked you to open this with a memorable performance of this is because I think about the first time there was a performance of it, and I don't remember what it was for, but I do remember a performance of it that Beyonce did that I saw televised that impressed the fuck out of me. I was oh my god, Beyonce is making this song work. But Beyonce is an incredibly well-trained singer with a really solid, wide vocal range who has probably grown up singing this damn song because she's been singing since she was a kid, and if you've been singing since you were a kid, you were probably at plenty of, random-ass Little League games when you were 7 and singing the national anthem, so she's had her practice. But it is genuinely impressive when we find people who can actually sing this ridiculously difficult song. And if you think that it's not a very difficult song, you are either a very talented singer or you don't know a goddamn thing about music. Putting that out there.
I didn't mention this during the question, but now I wonder, I've been to several hockey games, and it seems like it's becoming a thing for several teams to have their one person. For Tampa Bay, it is U.S. Air Force Staff Sergeant Sonia Bryson, who has sung at every Tampa game I've ever been to. The Boston Bruins had opera singer Rene Rencourt until he retired. I can think of several teams who have just a certain person that sings the song for them. I always thought it was kind of this is our hometown person sort of thing. Now I'm starting to wonder if it was not only that, but maybe, hey, we found somebody who we know can actually sing the song. Okay, you're gonna sing it forever now.
I mean, yeah, I could totally believe that. I mean, it's not a song that, I don't think it was a song that was ever meant to be sung, dude. It was written for instruments. It was written to be played on fucking fiddles and bagpipes and brass instruments,
Right. You brought up it was originally a poem, and that was another thing I didn't know, but it was a poem. It was meant to be spoken. Yeah. ostensibly.
Yeah, and the song it's based on was, it was like a bar song. It's the stuff you're not supposed to be singing. You're supposed to be playing it on an instrument, and people are, I guess, dancing to it or humming to it or however British people dance. Like, this is the kind of song the British would dance to. That's probably the best summation I can give it. But in that vein, and this is kind of my final point, and this is the thing that goats me more than anything else. It just gets at me about this song. This is a very boring song. This is a very difficult to sing song. It's a song with a troubled origin, with a not terribly interesting past, and I gotta say, if you're gonna go with some of those older songs, like fucking America the Beautiful is way better than this, for one thing. But more than anything, you made a joke, Andy, that, the final countdown could be our national anthem. And I find that funny. But I will take two slights against that. One is specifically because of the fact that Europe, the band, is Swedish. They're not American. I'm going to get... This is the most patriotic I'd probably ever get on this podcast. Europe's not an American band. They're a Swedish band. They play metal. Metal is a British-invented genre. Americans did not invent heavy metal. Americans did, however, invent blues, jazz, rock and roll, folk, bluegrass, punk, funk, soul, disco, R&B, hip-hop, gospel, country and western, and even more than that. And the best we have to offer, the best that we can present, is a crappy British song with lyrics that our populace is too undertrained in poetic diction and phrasing to properly comprehend. Most Americans know every damn lyric to that first verse of this song. But much like the Pledge of Allegiance, I think very few of them know what the hell it means. Because they're not trained to understand that diction, that language, that meter, that way of speaking. And you know what? Okay, that's fine. A lot of the people who are trained to recite the beginning of the Declaration of Independence don't understand what it means. A lot of people who read certain translations of the Bible don't understand what it means. That's why we have to come up with new translations in dumber language. Fine. But we have such incredible American music. We have such a powerful tradition of music in the United States. I'm a huge music fan. And American music, in so many ways, the British invented heavy metal. Black Sabbath invents heavy metal in 1969, 1970. Black Sabbath invented heavy metal because they were a blues jazz fusion band that was messing around and decided to write, horror movie music. But they were a blues jazz band. They were a band that was playing American genres. Their roots were in American music. Pretty much, so much of what is the current global music consciousness comes from American music. And the best we can come up with is this piece of shit? I'm offended by that, Andrew. I'm offended. Every genre I just listed to you, I love so many songs from it. From every single one of them. I listen to every single one of those genres. I could think of literally dozens of songs in all of those genres that are so much better. Why do we settle for this? I'm asking, why do you think we settle for this, Andy, when we have access to all of this music?
Well, something that I can't help but think about is several of the genres you listed were invented by African Americans, and
oh shit,
we've made it pretty clear how we feel about them in relation to our national anthems. I mean, I say that, and that is an interesting coincidence, but I mainly mean it as a joke and less of a thinking point. But I mean, really, we're getting pretty close to some double plus good 1984 stupidity in the average man. We admitted, the both of us, that we thought this song was invented in 1764 and became the national anthem the day that the day that America became a country. And I think if you ask 100 people, 99 of them are going to say that they believe along the same thing. You know, we're dumb and we're lazy, and it's the national anthem. And while it has only been the national anthem for less than 100 years, to most people, it's been the national anthem for almost 300 years, as long as we've been a country. And how are you going to change it now? It is integral to our patriotism and our country. And I'm sure there's an eloquent way to phrase that argument, but the ineloquent way is, we're Tommy Lee Jones said it best: the average man is a dumb, stupid idiot, and you know it.
Imagine what you'll know tomorrow.
It's funny because every time I talk politics with my dad and sister, it has come up over the years that I've had an attitude for a very long time that the average American is deeply stupid, which is something they didn't agree with me on for a very long time. And it's funny because I think that over the years, I don't think they're with me on that one, but I think their opinion has shifted a little closer to mine over the years. Per their own admission. And it's funny because I think my attitude is softened. I don't think people are dumb. I think people are undereducated. I think people are not given a very expansive view of things.
Sure.
There can totally be an attitude where you say, I want a song that has a lot of history to be representative of American culture. I want something that embodies everything about the American spirit, that has been around for a very long time and is inspirational and this, that, and the other. And I'd say, Woody Guthrie wrote This Land Is Your Land, This Land Is My Land. That song is way better than our national anthem, is way more singable, and I think is a way smarter, more intelligent analysis of American ideals and American individualism and everything that this country struggles to live up to. But we like big bomb explosions and songs that have been around for 200 years, and we don't know any better. And you're right, it's the way it's always been, and it feels that way, My parents have been here since the 70s. I don't have any context to know any better than this, other than the research I did, other than the educating myself I did. So I don't want to end this on a Pyrrhic foot. I don't want to end it on a really lame denouement, but I just beg people out there to just think about this stuff a little more deeply, At the end of the day, does it fucking matter what our national anthem is? Pan American Championships for weightlifting just wrapped up. And Americans did really, really well. Very proud of all of them. And a lot of them put up posts on Instagram about how much pride they felt hearing the national anthem play during the medal ceremony. And I go, I don't ever want to take that away from you. I don't. You accomplish something. You're proud of what you accomplish. You're proud of, the country you represent. I actually don't want to take that from anybody. I just want the song to not suck, And the song sucks. So I beg all of you, please, take a good hard look at this song. Try to sing it. Just at home by yourself. Find a version of it you like. Find a couple. YouTube it. There's a million versions of this song on YouTube. Listen to, 5, 10. Try and sing along with it. Try and look at it as a song. Form your own opinion. But please separate out this garbage notion that because it's been our national anthem for such and such amount of time, because it's the national anthem you grew up with, it's not a bad song. There's so many things that represent everything you want represented better than this piece of shit. I just ask you to analyze that. Don't take anything for granted, because we take the national anthem for granted, and we shouldn't, because it's bad. It's a bad song, y'all. And this country has so many good songs, so much good music, and that's worth at least looking at with open eyes. So that's my entreaty to all of you, is look at your music with open eyes. Whatever your politics, wherever you stand, give the song a listen and try and understand how much better it could be.
I recently got some personal feedback from a friend of the show about the thing he appreciates the most is the passion we bring to our topics and the discussions we're able to have. I don't think anything we've talked about wonderfully encapsulates that notion as the treaties against the Star-Spangled Banner for entirely non-political reasons. So I thank you dearly, friend.
Oh, of course. Shall we move on to the last segment?
We certainly shall, because this is going to be a long one.
All right. You want to read this one, or should I?
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Hi, LHR. You're both in marriages where one person is from a white family and the other is Latino. So I feel you're uniquely qualified for this. My girlfriend and I got engaged a few months ago. Belated congratulations. Woo! And are doing the wedding planning thing. Her family's of Latin American descent, and, well, I'm not sure they're too happy about me marrying in. When I'm around, they speak a lot of Spanish, even though I know they speak both. They're pressuring her to do a lot of the traditional stuff with the wedding, which we're not into as a unit, and my fiance's hinted that they blame me and think I'm the one shooting down everything. I'm not. She and I just have our own vibe we want to go for. How can I get them to accept me, or at the least accept me more, and back off of her a little? I want to be on good footing with my in-laws, and I want to be respectful of their culture, but I don't want to be a doormat. And that is signed by Matthew Perry.
I think that's a Fool's Rush In reference. I don't think actual Matthew Perry is writing into our show. Although if you are, hello Matthew Perry, I very much enjoyed you in Fool's Rush In.
Yeah, you're great. A single reblog from you, and our fan base will skyrocket. It can't be Matthew Perry because he is in fact married. So
okay, well that's fine. And I also love that if it is a Fool's Rush In reference, and I'm making an assumption there because Fool's Rush In is kind of about this. I love that he went with Matthew Perry and not Matthew Perry's character from Fool's Rush In, which I think his name was Alex.
No.
Alex, this is Chewie.
Chewie, hi. Luke Skywalker. How are you?
He's getting a little more than he bargained for.
And I think I only remember that because it's my name. I don't even remember his last name.
I have never seen Fool's Rush In, but seeing that Selma Hayek is in it means I'm going to correct that very shortly.
I love that movie. I grew up on that movie. I think we owned that movie when I was a kid. It's a fun 90s rom-com. It's not a great movie, but it's fun. It's just, you watch it. You watch it.
All right. Well, thank you, Matthew.
I feel like it's worth mentioning this up front. So Matthew said up front that we both are in marriages with a white family and a Latino family. Demographics-wise, I think this is closer to you because it sounds like Matthew Perry is the white dude.
Yeah.
And he's marrying into a Latina family. I was the Latino dude who married a white lady. So I feel like this is closer to a degree on your end, and to pretend that the sexes of the parties involved are not important to the experience is to be willfully negligent.
Sure.
So do you want to start?
I am reminded of my own experience, and not even just with the marriage stuff, but it does sound like you're in a little bit of a trickier spot. The only time my in-laws would ever speak Spanish around me, and I didn't know this in the moment, but I would be told after the fact, it was usually stuff of like, did you wash your hands after going to the bathroom? Yes. Why the hell are you asking me this?
So things they would be embarrassed to say in front
Correct.
of you.
It was never, to my knowledge, used as a weapon of, look at this pendejo who presumably can't speak our language. Let's talk about him. Anyway.
Okay, that's encouraging.
Also, I think it's worth mentioning, my wife is the youngest of 3 daughters, and all 3 of them married white dudes. So I think by Mariah, her family had just given up. But, okay, into the actual advice.
Dios lo bendiga. Go on.
The biggest thing I want to talk about, man, Matthew, my bud, is your wife has a responsibility here. She's made it clear to you that they blame you and they think that you are the one kiboshing some of the traditional stuff of the wedding. Your wife has a responsibility to make it clear to her parents that that is not the case and that she does not want to do this traditional stuff. And this is where I can speak from experience, because it's basically what my wife did when we were planning our wedding. You know, there were things that both of our parents tried to push onto our wedding. And, you know, jointly we each turned outward inward into our own families and made it clear, I do not want this. You know? And you are obviously at a disadvantage here, and it is incredibly kind of you to care about what her family and what her in-laws thinks. But you also make it pretty clear that, like, you and your wife-to-be, your fiance, are the key decision makers in this scenario. And as long as she understands how unreasonable her folks are being, I don't think you need to worry that, like, you're going to step on too many toes here. And, you know, at the end of the day, if her family doesn't like your wedding, that's tough shit for them, man. It's your wedding.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, that was my your turn.
Okay. I'm with you in a lot of ways, Andy. Matthew, again, my experience with this is a little bit different, but there's an interesting aspect here that I do want to zero in on, which is you saying that, you know, your fiance, who, for the purposes of this question, I'm going to refer to as Selma Hayek.
Good on you.
No. Again, Fools Rush In, man. It's a good movie. Watch it. All of you, watch Fools Rush In. It's worth a watch. The thing I zero in on is this notion that her parents are blaming you for her not being interested in this traditionalist spot. I'm going to be not to throw you under the bus, Andy. I'm going to be a little more generous to her in that it has often been my experience as the child of Latin American parents, as the youngest child, and admittedly as the one boy, that there's a certain, let's say, preciousness with which Latino parents often treat their children. I have had the argument with my parents before, where I have said, you aren't listening to me when I tell you this is a thing that I want. You think that this is something my partner wants, and I think that you're saying that because you don't want to deal with the reality that I don't want or value or like the same things that you do. You know, I've had the conversation with both of my parents where I've had to be like, yo, my values and your values are not 100% the same. My interests, my desires, my beliefs are not the same as yours. And my parents have struggled to accept that in many ways. They've gotten better about it over the years, you know? I'm closing in on 30. My sister's 5 years older than me. My parents aren't new to this parenting thing, but they're still getting it over a process. You know, they're accepting me more as an adult over time. You, Matthew Perry, don't list your ages here, yours or Selma Hayek's. I don't think you guys say how long you've been together, which is fine. You don't have to, but
you've been engaged for a few months at the least.
Okay, so they've been engaged for a few months. You don't say how long you two have been together, because this is a different thing. If you're 22, I'll tell you from experience. At 22, a lot of Latin American parents haven't figured out that their kids are adults yet. They don't know how to treat them like adults yet. They're still, they're niñito and niñita. They're still their little kids. And they're gonna treat them like that. And they're gonna be like, oh, my kids don't value my things. They must be being manipulated by their friends. This must be those things that I've been warned about. That's not to say all parents are like that, but that's taught in the culture in a lot of ways. So some of this may be her parents being really precious about her. Because they don't want to think that their daughter is rejecting them. And that's what it comes down to. They think they're being rejected. You know, her parents could probably do really well with a round of therapy. I constantly recommend therapy on this show. Her parents could probably do really, really well with a round of therapy on this one. But it doesn't change the fact, A, they're probably not going to get therapy. B, you're going to get married here. Dude, you two are... I'm assuming the plan here is y'all are planning to have a relationship that will outlive her parents. And that means that they essentially either need to get over this or die miserable. Either way, you're going to win. That's a dark one.
It's a very you answer.
It is. It's a very dark way to look at it. And my therapist has told me that I have issues with this kind of thinking. But I say this to say, I don't think this is going to get fixed in time for the wedding. I think that Andy's advice is great for the wedding. Because the fact of the matter is, you're right, Andy. It's their fucking wedding. You should have the kind of day you fucking want. And if they have a problem with that, that's their shit. I don't know if they're financially involved in this wedding. You don't mention that.
Right, that's a pretty key contingency variable.
And if they are, you and Selma Hayek might need to make some decisions about what you're willing to compromise on and what you're not. You know, sometimes there are relationships where they say, okay, if you don't want to have the wedding the way that I want, the way that I require, the way that I find traditional and appropriate, and that's another thing, Latino parents will regularly be like, well, why would you do it any way other than this way? This is the right way. But that's besides the point. The point is, if they're the money side of this, then yes, financial manipulation can be a factor here. You and your fiance can have a conversation there about what the practical ways to get through this wedding are, what you'll compromise on, what you won't compromise on. Your options literally range from, fuck you, we're not doing it, we don't want your money, we will do it ourselves, or have our courthouse wedding, or downsize it, we're not dealing with this, to, okay, you're paying for it, we'll acquiesce for the wedding, fine, really all we just want is to be married, we don't give a shit. And that is a spectrum, and you all can together decide where on that spectrum you want to fall, if finances are an issue. If finances aren't an issue, fuck them. They'll show up to the wedding or they won't. And if they don't, that's not your ish. If they're the type of parents who would not show up to a wedding because you don't want to do it a certain way, and they blame you, the husband, for that, that is their goddamn problem. And again, their choice is learn to be okay with the person that your child who you love has married and the person that your child who you love has become and chosen to become, or die unhappy. Either way, not your responsibility. You've got a beautiful relationship that you are starting, a beautiful new journey on this wedding, a wonderful marriage that you can have, a family that you are building unto yourself. And if they don't want to be a part of that because they can't get over their cultural bullshit, that's their fault. And it's going to suck if that happens. But it is better than the alternative.
Absolutely. You know, you touched on a lot of stuff I was going to circle back to, so I'll make my final word this, Matthew. It seems like you really found a great Salma Hayek. You know, but by what you've listed in your question, at least, it sounds like you guys are really on the same page and you found a good partner, and that's what she is she's going to be your partner in life. This would be so much harder if she was not in sync with you on this issue, but it sounds at least like she is, and you know, I want to bolster you and remind you of that fact, because at the end of the day, that is what is going to matter. Your in-laws, while it is important to have, while it is nice, I'm not even going to say important, while it is nice to have a good relationship with them, I really enjoy my relationship with my in-laws. It's not essential.
I really enjoy mine.
Yeah, we both do, of course. But it is not essential. I thank you for bringing up this problem. It does sound to me like it weighs much more heavily on your in-laws' shoulders than yours.
Yeah.
You got anything else?
Yeah, I think that's really solid. The one other thing I'll add, since you do make a point in your question to say that you want to be respectful of their culture. The way to be respectful of their culture is to respect their culture. Don't ever be derogatory. Don't ever. I can say the shit that I just said about Latin American culture because I grew up in Latin American culture. If Andy just said the same things that I just said, I would punch him in the dick. I would reach through this microphone and punch him in the dick because that wouldn't be okay because he didn't grow up in this culture. You, Matthew Perry, did not grow up in this culture. So the way you are respectful is you don't say anything derogatory. You keep it to the individual behavior of your in-laws. Never blame the culture yourself. If your fiance chooses to blame the culture, that's fine. That's her prerogative. You don't do that. You stay mindful of that. Keep your criticism levied on the people, and I think you'll be safe. You don't have to be a doormat. Even if the culture says, these are my children and my children's partners, they should be my doormat. Am I going to say that that's a thing in Latin American culture? I'm not going to say it's not, but I am going to say you don't have to be a doormat. You just have to be mindful to keep your critiques and your criticisms on the individuals, not the culture. So if you do that, you don't need to live with the white guilt. So that's my final word.
And that's been Love-Hate Relationship. And you know what? Again, congratulations, Matthew. Good on you, man.
Yes, you know what? Yeah, congratulations. Hey, you didn't include any identifying information in this. You sent this anonymously, but if you're comfortable with it, send us some photos. We would love to shout you out.
Most def.
Send us some photos from your wedding, like best wishes. And hey, I don't know if you're anywhere near me, but if you need an officiant and you're anywhere near Western North Carolina, I do officiate weddings. I am amazing at it, and it's awesome.
He is amazing at it. I can confirm.
Yeah.
So just a reminder to your listening audience, if you have a relationship problem, be that with a loved one, a loved one's family, a friend, a coworker, a pet, anything that you could qualify as a relationship and want our perfectly unqualified advice, you can send those questions to lovehaterelationshippodcast@gmail.com, where we promise we'll read them.
You can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, or even TuneIn Radio. Hey, Mom, you, my mother, are awesome. And you are an awesome in-law to my partner, so thank you. We would also love it if you reviewed us on any of all of those. I mentioned before, we've gotten a couple of new reviews. Some of them have not been nice, and we're not mad at you, but, we could really use some nice reviews to balance it out.
The only person I'm mad at is the person who gave a 1-star no comment. Comment, damn you.
That's fair, yeah. We're open to feedback, y'all. We take it happily. You can send that feedback to us directly on Twitter at LHRPod. That's LHRPOD. You can send us your questions there, and you can follow us there to keep up with new episodes. Or again, send us feedback. We're down. We listen.
Absolutely. If you want to see what we do, not on the podcast side, although it is pretty interwoven, you can follow me personally at JovoCop2113 on Twitter.
And I'm at _X_RUIZ on both Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for listening, y'all. And please, as always, tell your enemies.